as Marianne said, a lot of times the hardest part of giving a speech is figuring out what to speak about, correct? All right, well tonight I cannot guarantee 100%, I think 99.5%, that I can give you some ideas on how to improve your ability to choose a topic. Now, there's two main categories of speeches that I'm going to talk about. So you apply what I'm going to say a little differently. First of all, we have our Toastmasters speeches. But we also, sometimes you go outside of Toastmasters and you do speeches. Maybe at your workplace, a conference, a seminar. And you're still going to have to figure out what to speak about. So like I said, think about how you would apply what I'm going to share with you to these situations, because they are a little bit different. Now there are two main sources for us to get ideas for our topics. First of all, there's our personal experience. And for me, I think this is the most important. Because when you give a speech from your personal experience, it has authenticity. And you can speak directly from reality. You know, like when I competed in the humorous speech contest, I shared things from my own life. And that made it even more funny for people when instead of being some abstract thing. There's also reference material. A better way to say this would be our information resources. And so these are the two main things that I'm going to talk about for a little bit. Let's start with the presentation, the personal experience. First of all, your interest, your hobbies, and your activities that you're involved in make great sources for topics. Like, you know, I like making chocolate chip cookies. Wouldn't it be great for me to do a speech on how to make chocolate chip cookies? Daniel shared with us that he loves cars. So he shared one time with us about all the cars he owns. So those are his interests. Now, if you're involved in any kind of community service project, you could probably have a couple of great topics that you could share from that. Career or job. I don't know, how many of you have had more than one job or career? Anybody have more than one? Any more than 5? I mean, so I have a lot of experiences to share with people. And some of you do too. And so you can learn, and you can share what you've learned with other people from the jobs you've had. Also, family, friends, and colleagues. Let's say you had a great father, and he taught you some great wisdom. You could give a speech on the wisdom I learned from my father. That would make a great speech. Or if you're a mother, say things that having kids, what I learned from having kids. That would be an interesting topic. Then you have friends or colleagues at work. Maybe there's some situation that you were involved with them doing something that was either funny or you learned something from it, and you can talk about that as well. Then you have your education or training. Whatever your education you've done, maybe there's some great topics that you could get from that, from the things you learn while you go into school or university. And training activities, like maybe you went to a training where you learned how to deal with personal conflict. So you learn that, you practice it for a while, and you gain some wisdom as you practice, then you're ready to share with others. So you can see you can have lots of great ideas for topics. Now let's go on to our reference materials. Books. I'm going to do a presentation on slide design at some point. This is considered the Bible for slide design. So this is a good book for me to read. Would you agree in preparing for my topic? I just got to say this though, that Toastmasters slides are so yesterday. All right? So I actually made some pictures. There was no images. You saw, I have put some images in. Toastmasters is so far behind what's really cool that, you know, we have to teach them. But Toastmasters is redoing all their educational materials, so maybe they'll get cooler in the future. Okay? So you have magazines. Oh, maybe there would be something in a professional magazine that you received, that you could find a topic. You have a personal or a hobby or some special interest magazine, maybe there would be some great ideas in those. Newspapers. Here's my question. Actually, how many people read newspapers anymore? Does anybody read a newspaper? You're strange. You're strange. He's the only one that reads a newspaper. Online.
Online, actually.
Yeah, everything's going on tomorrow.
In another language.
All right, Facebook is a great place. If you're active on it all, you always see people put some links on there to articles. And I'm always putting stuff on our Brush Up Toastmasters Club, so maybe some of those articles you go, hey, that's a great idea for a speech. Blogs. Blogs is where I find most of my ideas. I follow blogs. If you're in a certain profession, it would be good to find out who is considered some of the best people in your profession and see if they blog and follow them regularly. Or if you have a special interest and you find out who's the best out there with blogs and follow them, and you can get great ideas from them. Websites, of course. And how do we find all this information from the blogs and websites if we're not active in it all the time? Google. You can put like whatever subject you want and go look, and you can find all kinds of stuff. There's no excuse for not finding information about any topic you want to talk about. But once we get all this kind of information gathered up, what do we do when we get inspired from what we learn or what we look at? What do we do? What's the first thing you should do if you get inspired by something? Write it down. First thing. Or if you got a smartphone, make a note. Because you know what's going to happen if you don't? Like I told Kathleen, I used to have a photographic memory, but unfortunately, I'm out of film. Some of us don't have very good memories, so we need to write things down. Also, if you find something online, Control, paste, and put it in your folder. I have a folder on my laptop called Toastmasters. Inside that, there's a subfolder called Speeches. And then within that, there's a subfolder called Potential Ideas. And that's where I keep everything at. If I get PDFs or whatever, they go in there. And I have a document where I can put, like if I found something, like I did a speech on Face Your Fears. Where did I get the idea? I read a blog article. I copy-pasted the link, put it on this document, and then I found a few quotes I liked, and I put it there. And for the next few weeks, I kept looking online for other things. So I gathered my resources for my topic. And so that way, you don't have to wait till you get to a speech to start looking. If you're always doing it all the time, you'll have a great collection of ideas to look at. Now, this is a very good blog for you to check out if you're new. 6 minutes. For the first 7 speeches, he has a lot of information to help you with your speech. And oh, by the way, I'll make a PDF of these slides and send it to everybody. Okay? And I'll also put it on the Facebook group so that you can download it. All right, now look at the bottom, towards the bottom there. It says, at the top of the page now, topic ideas for your icebreaker speech. All 7 speeches, he gives you ideas. There's links to videos to see speeches and everything, so it's a great resource. And it's 6minute.dlugan.com. Like I said, I'll send these to you if you want. Then here's a really good website if you want ideas. Lifehack. How many know about this website? A few of you? Check this out. There's tons and tons of ideas in this place. Okay, now let's say you get all these great ideas. You have so many, how do you pick one? How do you narrow it down? To narrow your selection. How would you do that? I hear a few laughs because you guys want to talk. It's the most narrow street, one of the most narrow streets in the world. Okay? So if you're doing a speech from a manual, a project from a manual, you're going to already have your selection limited because you have specific objectives for each speech. If you're going to do a speech with vocal variety, you're going to want to do something that's going to allow you to use your voice. You're not going to want to teach about code. All right? So find topics that are appropriate for your objectives. So that'll help limit them. Now, if you were invited to do a speech somewhere, you need to talk to the person that invited you and ask them some questions. Now, I'm going to share some of the things you can think about or to ask, but remember, you've got to decide how they apply to Toastmasters and how they apply outside. Because in Toastmasters, you don't have to be so specific. You can talk about anything you want. We'll listen to you. But out there, you better talk about what they need to hear. Okay? So narrowing your selection. You have to know about your audience, the occasion that you're speaking, your own abilities, and be specific. What I mean by that is you don't want to make your speech topic desserts. It's too general. All right? But making chocolate chip cookies is more specific, correct? So that's what you want to do, make it more specific. Now let's look at each one of these individually. Your audience. How many people are going to be at your speech? This is the kind of questions you could ask the person who invited you. What is their age range? Are they familiar with the subject? Because if they're not, you better simplify it and make sure to be ready to explain things. Do they have similar education and interest and backgrounds and experiences for what you're talking about? You need to know that because it'll really determine how you will do your speech. Now let's go on to looking at the occasion. Does the event have a theme? That will limit your topics. When are you scheduled to speak? Because here's why that's important. What will happen before your speech and what will happen after your speech? What if you got up there and the person before you talked about the same thing you did or going to? Just ask Roxy at the National Speech Contest when someone used the same kind of introduction. Right? She talked about Romeo and Juliet, but the very speech before Roxy, the person got up and talked about Romeo and Juliet. So these are things you want to learn or discover. Now, narrow in your selection for your own abilities. What enthuses you? What interests you? That's probably one of the best things to use to determine what topics you talk about. What knowledge do you have? Are you an authority? Okay, if you're an authority on something, that's going to limit your speeches too. Because if you go to speak about something and they say to you, you can speak about anything, you don't want to go and speak about something totally out of it. Like say if you were a biochemist and you're an authority, you're not going to talk about, okay, I like to cook and talk about some cooking issue. They probably wouldn't be very happy with you. So take that into consideration. Now be specific. Is the topic specific enough for the time allotted? That really limits you. You only have so much time, so you have to get more specific the shorter the time is. Do the subpoints support the topic and add to the speech? And what can be cut from the body of the speech? This is something we all need to learn. I've had to do it. Some of my speeches, they started out 15 minutes long for a 7-minute speech. So you learn to cut and cut and cut. And you think that's terrible, but actually it makes for a much better speech because you get to what's really important. Conclusion. Take your personal experience, combine it with the resources and information you've gathered, put those together, and take your considerations, your audience, the occasion, and your abilities. Combine all these three things together, thinking through, you come up with this, an excellent speech topic. And when you come up with an excellent speech topic, you're well on your way to a great speech. Mr. Toastmaster?